And we are live once again. Welcome back. Welcome all and welcome into the Spin Cycle. Andrew Southwick and RC Williams with you for this Tuesday, August something. I don't have any. What is, August 18th.
August 18th, sir.
We are more than halfway through August. This year is flying by. And I realize you're seeing some sunlight on me. I'm back in my studio, but I still have to get it redressed up, and I've got a window that's over my head that actually the noonday sun comes down right on my shoulders and sometimes on the top of my head. So bear with me if it ever looks like I'm wearing a shiny silver suit. That's just the sun. Let's see. We'll get that taken care of. My goodness, so much going on today. But first, RC, man, how you been? Long time no see. Been almost 24 hours.
It's like it was yesterday.
It's almost like it was yesterday. Yeah. My goodness. Okay. Well, let's dig in. There's a clip going around. I gotta share this on my screen. I tell you what, I'm falling asleep at the wheel. Let me share this screen with you here.
This is the beauty of us doing this live, is that people get to see all the logistics that go into what we do.
This is what this is what happens usually, except it's usually done either ahead of time or in post-production. But anyway, JD Vance, Vice President JD Vance, has been making the rounds virally, primarily with a 3-year-old clip where he advocates that the U.S. dollar no longer be the world's reserve currency. I want to play you that clip now, and then we're going to dig into this from a couple of different angles, because there are a few different ways this is being parsed, particularly in right stream. Well, probably it is right stream media. I'll coin that phrase right now on politically conservative, mainstream, and alternative media. But let's check this out first. Make sure that's looking right. Here we go. Here is JD Vance advocating that the dollar should not be the world reserve currency.
That's exactly right. And by the way, I'm this is like maybe super heterodox. I am not sure that I think the reserve currency is actually good for the United States of America. I think there is a good argument that reserve currency status is akin to coal in Appalachia. It's a resource curse, right? It allows your consumers to consume very cheaply, right? That's been the story of the American economy for the last 15 or so years. Even before that, is we can just borrow basically in an unlimited way because we have the reserve currency. That's exactly right. And by the way,
we can borrow because we have the reserve currency. It makes life too cheap for America. So RC, I'm gonna let you take this first, and because there are some background pieces that you have to this that people should be aware of.
Yeah.
But I do have a counter argument to it, and I want to just preface this by saying, well, one of the reasons why the cheap goods are so important right now to America is that of the American dream, about the only thing that's left that people can afford are the $250 70-inch TVs at Walmart. Housing is unaffordable. Food is getting unaffordable. College has been unaffordable forever. All the things, automobiles now. I mean, a low car payment used to be $130. Now they advertise $500 payments on television for a lease as if this should bring you into the dealership. That's a low payment these days. So with our purchasing power being reduced all the time and more debt piling up, the only piece of the American dream left is being able to buy these consumer goods. So I want to put that on the table. We'll come back to some of that later. But RC, you've got also some background to this because of who supports JD Vance, and what that could mean in a potential JD Vance presidency.
So, Andrew, actually, interestingly enough, not too long after this video was originally done, we started having the conversation in earnest about who JD Vance was, because the buzz was that he was going to be in line for the role of vice president. And ultimately ended up happening. I'll come back to that in a second. Something that he said in there that I didn't catch when I'd seen it prior is he talked about this abundance curse, like coal in Appalachia. And I'm like, do those two words necessarily go together? Like, I'm familiar with the term, but boy, isn't that some like foreshadowing of how you want people to think about something like abundance? That's biblical, by the way. He should probably think about that. Now, all of that said, Andrew, you think about who JD Vance is and where he came from. So this great story, Hillbilly Elegy and everything, mastercraft piece of work, right? And Through that process, it was found that he was tenable and usable. So what happens? Money starts to coalesce behind him. I think everyone who watches us here or on Culture Crossroads or on the Watchman Brief are intimately familiar with the name Peter Thiel, and likely Alex Karp and Joe Lonsdale, those guys who founded or co-founded Palantir, your mass surveillance group right down the street, kind of like State Farm, right? Like a good neighbor, they're always in your window. So here's Thiel, those guys, they bankroll JD Vance. He becomes an investor successfully, as best we can tell. He gets the book. Now he's liquid, right? And they're like, okay, now politically, this is where this is going to work out for you, right? So they position him to run for Senate. Now, many people have already forgotten the Ohio Senate race from a few years back with him. It was very contentious and it cost a ton of money to get him over the finish line. But he was an important piece of that wheel. Now, if anybody here has watched Whitney Webb do her work, not only on Peter Thiel, but also on the state of Ohio and what it's ultimately being turned into by Les Wexner and others, it is a totalitarian, dystopian, data-driven, that's what they're trying to make it into. Okay, one of the cities there, that's basically the whole thing. It is owned by these groups who believe that we don't need government, we need a CEO to run it, and they're responsible to the people. We know how that's going to work. All that said, I wanted to lay some groundwork to understand where JD Vance came from and how ultimately we came to the conclusion that if JD Vance were indeed the vice presidential nominee, if that was the pick from the Trump administration, then Trump was going to take money from the broligarchs or the tech bros because he had bills to pay. Just being honest. And when I say that to people, they say, well, he's rich. And I'm like, he don't want to pay those bills. Rich people don't want to pay those bills. They want somebody else to pay those bills. It's part of the reason why they're rich. Okay. Play it smart, right? Of course, I don't want to pay those bills. So as soon as JD Vance is the nominee, here comes a ton of money. Elon Musk put in a ton. A bunch of those guys who were liberals who then magically turned libertarians. I want everyone to imagine Homer Simpson going into the bush and coming out of the bush as something else. And then all of a sudden they became MAGA. Well, there's a reason for that. And what we said at the time, Andrew, and we've continued to say, is that if JD Vance is the nominee, Peter Thiel and his associates are going to have an outsized influence on the Trump administration. So what do we see now? And this actually ties into someone like Tucker Carlson. 1789 Capital is created. Peter Thiel has a hand on that, along with some others, including Donald Trump Jr., who is apparently running the fund. They make investments. They provide technology products. They've had their hands in a bunch of things. Interestingly enough, when Tucker Carlson left Fox, the first group he went to pitch the Tucker Carlson network to, 1789 Capital. There are relationships and things happening here, Andrew, that make that video or give it some context in a way where it makes it make a whole lot of sense. And I know you've got some additional context to this, but I want to tie in when you have a chance to share that, where this ties into some of the other pieces that are currently in the administration, because it's not just two wings of the same bird, it's two wings of the same bird with all the same feathers underneath.
So if you just look at Vance's comments just at surface level, we're not looking, if you were disassociated or unaware of what you just explained, and I know some of the other pieces that we're going to unfold here in a moment, the argument then is this. Well, of course, that's going to make some sense because now we're in this whole new world, right? The economies are changing, and America has an entitlement problem that there is not an electable constituency to face. Politicians don't want to do it because, unfortunately, too many people, and a lot of it, boomer generation, they're expecting their Medicare and Medicaid and retirement and all these things. And those are the number one expenditures that we have in our country, soon to be surpassed by the interest on our debt, but that notwithstanding. And there is a moral aspect to that too. Look, we have encouraged these generations of people to pay into the system and told them that this money will be there to help take care of you in your later years. We can't, we at this point, we cannot just take that away, right? I mean, just morally we can't. But at the same time, there's also the problem of dependence on government in the first place and the wrong role of government in our lives. We have both of those things that are true at the same time. So if you have an entitlement problem that you're not going to deal with, one, because there's not a political appetite for it, either from the voters or from DC, and two, because we can't just take it away from those who are depending on it at this point. I mean, we're Gen X. We pretty much know that none of that money is going to be there for us. So we are going to get screwed in that.
Yep.
We are the generation that we've been paying into this, but we can see that it's not going to be there for us. Let alone the dollar may not be there for us by that time.
True.
So we get that. And, if I was advocating a policy, it would be something along the lines of, okay, those who are, in the boomer class, we're going to figure out a way to take care of you, but we're going to start to curb this spending, and we're going to start to trim government at this line here, which would affect us. But we already know we're not getting it anyway, so we might as well start fixing it, right? Instead of just screwing it up. As it were, if that's going to continue down that road, then we know the spending is going to continue down that road. Then what else is going to happen that we have warned about? Well, eventually, our dollar is going to be so overextended that it's not going to be worth anything. And at that point, then what do you have come in and take its place? Well, here is a one-to-one offer for your dollar in Bitcoin, in stablecoin, in some form of digital controllable currency. And I believe that the current track we're on, that is where we end up. And I think that many, including somebody like Vance, who is tied in with the Silicon Bros, who clearly would be aware of digital currency on the horizon, I think they see that too. I think that's also why they're not worried about reining in this spending, because they've already built in how they're going to deal with that. So they're looking toward a completely different economy that reserve currency, as we understand it, may not matter today. Now, I think that's a terrible outcome, because now our currency is controlled. Cash is gone from society, which I believe. No, I'm not going to say that. But if you're just looking at this on the surface, you would say, okay, that makes sense, because we don't want to deal with entitlements, we're not going to. So, yeah, maybe we need to start moving that a different way, because the economy is going to change. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that's what you're hearing from from many conservative talkers who are supportive or are in the corner of a JD Vance, or might support a JD Vance for president. That's the conservative argument coming out of that. There's some valid points in terms of how the economy is changing and how we don't want to deal with entitlements, but that breeds a whole another set of problems.
Isn't it interesting, Andrew? Like tomorrow's news 2 years ago, right? Here we are again. We were talking about this explicitly, and we said, look, that debt ain't never getting paid off. Let's just be honest. The number's that big. Everybody has a problem except for the government, right? So let's just work under the premise that debt's not getting paid off. Well, how do you make it all go away and make everything right? You plunge the current version of the currency to a place where it's no longer useful. You scare everybody, half the tarnation, tell them they basically lost everything, but they're going to get made whole one-to-one with this new thing that's going to solve all your problems. There goes the debt. People work out of fear. They become closer to the control grid system, and there you go, right? Almost like clockwork, Andrew, almost like it's right on time. So hang on to that one for a second, because I want to tie another piece in here, because what I'm hearing from people is, yeah, look, I know JD Vance isn't the real deal, or there's these issues or whatever, and I'm not down with that. So, go Marco Rubio. I want to remind everyone, because part of what Vance is talking about here is the logic of a multipolar world versus a unipolar world. In essence, the hegemony that the United States has as the global leader is going to sunset, and it's going to be a multipolar world with the United States, China, and Russia. That is the prevailing logic. Okay? JD Vance has said something to this effect. Do you know who else has said something to that exact effect? Marco Rubio. So, before you get all excited and you go chasing a shiny object, okay, just understand it's not just two wings of the same bird. It's two sets of the exact same feathers under the wing at the same time. They're trying to all move you in the same direction. They just need to know what flavor of ice cream that you like to eat so that you will take it.
And that's the uniparty. That's the uniparty playbook. What dress do we need to wear in order to get you to go this way? If it's blue, if it's red, it doesn't matter. We'll do either one. We'll espouse your views in campaign season, and then we'll do our own thing once we get in. And we all know that's what's happening, and we all know that's what's been happening. And again, that's why it's important. We want to provide context for these stories on Spin Cycle. That's how we remove the narrative. We give you the backstory. JD Vance's ties to Palantir, to Peter Thiel, to that ilk should give us some pause when you start talking about taking the dollar off reserve currency, or not having the dollar be the world reserve currency, or seeing things like an energy resource like coal as an abundance problem, an abundance curse. An abundance curse. Those phrases have different meaning when you see the context of who is supporting a JD Vance, for example.
100%.
I want to give you the last word on this here before we move on.
Folks, discernment in this season is everything. And I know that not everyone who watches the Spin Cycle is a believer, okay, is a professing Christian. And I get that. But please understand this. Discernment in this season is going to be everything. And being a watchman. So now you don't get to just sit back with the information like I did for years and like Juliana did for years. We're like, well, we know, but nobody's really listening and we're just not going to say anything. No. In this season, when you see stuff like that, you have to call it out, because there are people counting on you who have no idea. You may want to share clips from this show today. There are people who have no idea, no context whatsoever. Once they have context, though, they can use their own discernment to make the right decisions. Because in essence, what we're dealing with here, Andrew, is we're dealing with a couple of potential leaders of the free world coming down the pike. Do you really want those people in charge with those types of views and that moral compass? Do you really want them running things? Because they are most certainly part of the agenda. What is that ultimately going to mean for you and your family? Do you really want that to happen, or do you want to speak up now and work to head it off at the pass?
And I should offer this tidbit as well. We also have both parties that are doing their very best to upend the primaries and render them useless. Both parties are doing that. We saw the Democrats do it with Biden when they installed Kamala Harris as the nominee, and we're seeing that. Particularly, we saw it with and the GOP with Donald Trump didn't participate in the GOP primary, and we also see the undermining of primaries, particularly in the state of Florida. We also saw it in North Dakota as well this past primary season for them just about a month ago. But we're seeing it in Florida as well with the governor race. And so when you have people, and what does that mean? You take away the primaries. That's our opportunity to vote out the riffraff and nonsense and put in better people to vote for in the general election. That's one of the most powerful things that we the people, it's one of our most powerful tools. And both parties are trying to usurp that, because both parties want to be kingmakers. Both parties want to be the ones to choose who succeeds them in power. So we really then ultimately end up with a false choice in November. The illusion of choice. So we need to remember that is one of the forces at work as well. And that should be factoring in, because again, you put that with the money, you put that with the surveillance state, you add all those things together. It's like, well, my goodness, are we just, again, two wings of the same bird? Are we just putting in another piece of the same apparatus, or are we really bringing in somebody new who will actually be quote unquote America first, or who will actually preserve freedom and liberty in our country for everyone, and not just wealth for the favored few? Which, by the way, I've got a clip here. Could I play it? I won't play it because it'll get us off on a different tangent. But it's President Trump on a tarmac being interviewed, being asked about the poor economy, and he says, "Well, the economy is doing great as far as Wall Street is concerned." That is an admission right there. We have a K-shaped economy. Wall Street's doing great. If it's as far as Wall Street is concerned, well, what about Main Street, right? As we like to say. That's also an admission that Main Street ain't doing that well. And we need to look on the Wall Street side if we're going to pretend that we're having a great economy. It is great for some, but not for many. And that type of thing is going to continue. A few people are going to do really well, Everybody else are going to suffer in increasing degree until such time as the everybody else is made sufficiently dependent upon the favored few, who also, by the way, are in the seats of power.
Enjoy your feudalism.
Enjoy your feudalism. Oh my goodness. All right.
Whew.
Yeah. All right, next story here. And this story sucks also.
Yeah, it
be
does.
honest with you. You want to talk about, so let's see, let me bring this up here. Come on, son.
Well,
All
it's
right.
important. Yeah, it's important we do.
We do need to talk about this. All right, Palm Beach County Clerk of Court suspended and arrested on child sex abuse charges. This from WPTV reporting out of West Palm Beach, Florida. Palm Beach County Clerk of Court Michael Caruso was arrested Tuesday morning and immediately suspended from office by Governor Ron DeSantis on 5 felony child sex abuse charges, according to the arrest warrant and affidavit filed in Orange County Circuit Court. Caruso, 67, faces charges of kidnapping, lewd or lascivious molestation, lewd or lascivious exhibition, luring or enticing a child, and child abuse causing mental injury. There you see a tweet or an ex-post from Attorney General James Uthmeier saying the same thing, that he's arrested and the investigation is ongoing. He, being Caruso, is arrested. The investigation is ongoing. We'll provide more information to the public. Caruso also did state, and the article later notes, that, well, he's attracted to women, so why would he be a sexual predator for young boys? I don't think that is going to hold up in court, as it were. Just more, here's the other thing you talked about. Don't you want to know who you're electing? Don't you want to know who is in charge at these different levels? Well, these are some of the reasons why. Obviously, these kinds of child predators, we don't want them anywhere in society.
Right.
And again, this is why we bring this to you. It's not to be sensational, but you need to know the truth of what's going on. Because, by the way, we just saw in the case of Graham Plattner, right, that in the beginning, and kudos to Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature for moving forward with these charges. But in the beginning, the Democrats were all circling the wagons, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we want to protect this guy because we want that power bad enough. And make no mistake, we're now up against people in both parties who it's just a raw pursuit of power, and they'll defend anything and everything until it's not politically feasible for them to do so. All right, RC, you have a lot of information on the story. Tell us about it.
Yeah, disappointing to see, Andrew, but credit to Attorney General Uthmeier and, like you said, Governor DeSantis. I had a chance to spend some time with James Uthmeier not too long ago, and he is committed to justice. And for the most part, he believes that justice is blind, like he's following rules, and it does not matter which side someone falls on. This isn't a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is an issue in and of itself. I think what was equally disappointing, Andrew, in this, for those of you who are not from the state of Florida, the Florida legislature, both the House and the Senate, have supermajorities, basically Republican. Obviously, our governor's Republican. So it's a relatively red state. And the grassroots has historically had a high level of influence on what happens. Mike Caruso was actually one of the big door openers for grassroots coalitions to get to work to get legislation passed. He generally would have his door open and say, hey, listen, if there's anything you want to work on, I'm down with it. And he would champion a number of those causes. So it is disappointing to think that in all the time of those things happening, that there's this second person living underneath. But, I think the credit in this too goes to the fact that we're willing to police our own house, right? We have to be willing to police ourselves accordingly and make sure that we know who we're dealing with. And looking at the charges and everything, like on one side, you understand how this stuff gets delayed because they need to make sure they've got enough evidence to make an arrest and have a case and make it stick. But when I look back at 2025 and what happened on that cruise ship, according to the filing, and what he said to his family and others about what would happen to him should this get out, that's sickening. That is absolutely sickening, right? So you basically have a partial admission here, and then he goes back, and when he gets interviewed by investigators and throws up a different story, and the best he can come up with is, well, listen, I like women, so I don't know how I could be a molester and abuser of young boys. That's a sad testament. But again, it's disappointing that this stuff was floating around and it wasn't able to be caught earlier, but at least now it's being dealt with. And so I think it's important, again, as you said, it's a reminder that we need to be policing, and we need to know, you need to know who you're electing. Who are those people really? Because whoever they are is what's going to perform when they get elected.
And can I add to that? This is why accountability matters. This Mike Caruso case is one case. It's significant. He should be punished severely. I think he should be in a hole under the jail, and that jail then in another hole under the crust of the earth, if you ask me. But also at the same time, when you see a government not willing to police their own, when you see a government carving out loopholes for themselves and other favored people because they've done favors for each other, they're scratching one back and scratching another, you know that they're not interested in justice. This is why it's so important that people like Fauci be prosecuted. If Fauci is prosecuted, our lives materially will not change, but it will say that our government is actually pursuing justice. The fact that he's not in a jumpsuit in solitary confinement tells you that on a very broad scale, they're not interested in justice. They're interested in the pursuit of power, however they can do it, and they'll use every legal loophole to jump through and tiptoe through the raindrops in order to do it. It's sick, it's disgusting, it's pathetic. We're ruled by third-grade tyrants, and this is why something like this, again, kudos to the Florida government, to Ron DeSantis, to James Uthmeyer. This should be an example, not just for making Mike Caruso an example, but it should be an example for American government as well. Police yourselves, hold people accountable. If there are criminals, put them in prison. I don't care what post they occupy.
You are so spot on, right? But so the one other thing that I want to drop for people here, all these crazy things we see happening, quote unquote, teen takeovers and all this other foolishness. People say, I don't understand why this is happening. Well, you could go through a litany of answers, but really think practically for a second. When there's no real accountability or consequence for your actions, what are you going to do? Whatever you want, right? It's like the old adage, an armed society is a polite society, because nobody wants to get shot when everybody's got an equal opportunity to deal with you if you're out of line. Right? Thus, everyone tethers to the rules. But to your point, especially at the federal level, we've made it so easy to get away with everything. We've said this before on the spin cycle. What does that say to people? What example do you set? If the example you set is that this is a crack casino and everybody's got to get theirs, and it's all about inside information and what you can do with it or how much you're willing to pay for it every month, and that's okay, what do you think people are going to do? If there's no consequence for teen takeovers and it's not swift and harsh, then what do you think is going to continue to happen? If you allow people to go in and basically rob a store as long as it's under $1,000 and there's no consequence, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to do exactly that because they know what they can get away with. We've lost our way, Andrew, and I know I'm beating the drum, but we've lost our way. And a lot of that is because our biblical worldview and moral compass is so skewed or non-existent that there isn't a barometer or a determining factor for those things.
Yeah, and we figured out that we can charge people for our posts that may or may not have anything to do with the market moving, and so we can come out and bark and say anything we want, and meanwhile everybody else pays the price, and we should be grateful to do it because and other people are making the money, doing well, these kinds of things. It's just ridiculous. We're in a difficult spot. We are up on time here. We have about 50 seconds left here. This is why, again, today, primary day in Florida. I'm about to go to the polls here after we are done, and I'm not going to be voting for who my party tells me to vote for. I've done my homework. I've looked at every candidate on the ballot. And look, some candidates there aren't a lot of information on. But I'm not going to vote for somebody who I have to guess who they are. And I've said it before, after 24 and seeing what I believe is a betrayal of many voters, I'm not holding my nose and voting for anybody ever again. I'm only going to vote for someone who I believe would do the best job. And if they lose, then that's what's going to happen. Because until enough of us do that, until we stop just regurgitating with this false illusion, playing the stupid two-party game that's not even a two-party game, until we stop going along with our own national suicide. The walls of tyranny are going to shrink tighter and tighter. And we still have the power right now. The Constitution still matters. The Bill of Rights still matter. I'm going to exercise mine here this afternoon. I'm going to do it to the very best of my ability. And I would hope everyone else would do the same, because that's how we get out of this mess. If not, then we've just walked through what you're going to see. You're going to see cretins and losers and the worst people in power, because power attracts the worst people. And you're going to have a currency, a controlled currency, a controlled life. And, you know, you'll have McDonald's predicting your behavior, so on and so forth. All right, I'm rambling. All right, so you tell, go ahead and take a last word if you want, and let everybody know where they can find us.
Yes, your conquerors will rule over you if you do not take action and you're not a diligent watchman. I'll leave you with that as scripture verse you need to go and study. Okay, so you can find all things Watchman Action starting at watchmanaction.org. If you're looking for us on the socials, YouTube, X, Facebook, TikTok, the whole thing, our handle is the same everywhere. It is Watchman Action. You can also watch the Spin Cycle weeknights at 9:30 Eastern Time on the Watchman Action Network. We are on Beck Cable, Channel 40 in the great state of North Dakota, and streaming on our YouTube and Rumble and X channels 24/7, 365. For all things Andrew Southwick, you can go to Culture Crossroads 316 on YouTube. You can see the Spin Cycle. You can see Culture Crossroads. You can see his incredible monologues that now that he's back in his studio on a regular basis, he can do regularly. Culture Crossroads 316 on YouTube.
All right, for R.C. Williams, I'm Andrew Southwick. This has been the Spin Cycle. Thank you for spending some of your time with us today, whether you saw the whole show or just a little bit of it, or on demand later on. We appreciate it. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. Whatever channel you're looking at, please subscribe to that. It helps the show. We're not amassing our personal wealth off this. We're doing this, number one, because we believe it's what God wants us to do. Number two, we want to get the truth out to people. And as you know, there are very few people who are willing to do that, because the truth comes at a cost. And a lot of times it's a professional one. But it's important because we believe you're worth fighting for. We believe America's worth fighting for. That's why we do this. So please like, share, subscribe to the channels as you see them. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a good one. And if it's a primary day where you are, please exercise your right and make a good choice. All right, we'll see you again.